Hey everyone, it's Alan Schimmel. You're watching TechStrong TV, and today is Monday, April 27th. Welcome to our show. It's also, I guess, this is week 5 of TechStrong TV. We continuing. Actually, last week was by far our best week. We had a couple of long episodes of 3+ hours, but the content was pretty amazing. I think you're going to find today's content pretty amazing as well. We have a lot to go over with you. Before we do, though, I've mentioned a few times about our Slack channel, companion Slack channel to TechStrong TV. It's techstrongtv.slack.com. You can get an invite to it off of techstrong.tv. We'd love for you to come on there. We're going to put a poll up there today a one-question flash poll. And if you wouldn't mind, I'd love your answer on it. And if you can't get to the TechStrong TV, tweet me at ashimmy, ASHIMMY. The whole world's gone virtual, and that includes a lot of our conferences. We just, over here at Media Ops, we've done a bunch of great conferences in the last week or two. We have, of course, TechStrong Con coming up on June 4th, which is going to be a big one, too. We've always believed that the model for virtual conferences is they're vendor sponsor supported, but you don't charge people to come to a virtual event from the comfort of their desk or their house or their chair or what have you. And we're starting to see some conferences now pushing that, right? They're trying to charge people to come to their virtual events. And it's one thing to charge a nominal amount that maybe you get back when you attend. It's another thing to charge a couple $100 or more. And I'm wondering, and it could be that this is the way the market's going. I don't know. I'd like to hear your opinion, though. How much would you be willing to pay to attend a virtual event? And if you go to our TechStrong TV, we'll have a flash poll up there. Basically, the answer is I wouldn't pay to attend a virtual event. I'd pay a nominal amount of under $25, or I'd be willing to pay a couple of $100 to attend a virtual event, assuming the content and speakers and experience were great. Anyway, we're interested in your thoughts on this. I will tell you at Media Ops, our thought is to keep it free for attendees, right? We want you to come in there and enjoy it and learn. But anyway, it'll be interesting. If you guys wouldn't mind, it's techstrongtv.com. TechStrongTV.com. Get an invite over to the Slack channel, techstrongtv.slack.com, and it'll be in there in the TechStrong TV channel. So appreciate that. Let's talk a little bit about what we have on in store for us today. Number one, we have an interview we did with the CEO of a company called CoreLogix. Pretty cool company. They're making a lot of noise and a lot of buzz out around them around machine learning and log analytics, log analysis. Of course, we all save everything in logs now, and what good is having all that information in logs if we're drowning in it? And CoreLogix tries to solve that. We had a good chat about how you do that. After that, I'm really, really happy to have my friend Chenzi Wang on. I met Chenzi years ago in the information security space. Chenzi's been a Forrester analyst, an SVP of security vendors, VP of security and so forth at companies. She's a public company board member. She's also started one of the first women-controlled venture capital firms called Rain Capital. But Chenzi, you want to strip all that away? Great. Chenzi's just a really nice woman who's smart as a whip, and it's always great to speak to her. So we have a great conversation with Chenzi coming up. Then we're going to go back to the archives a little bit. I'm going to pull up one that we did just in January, the end of January this year, from our Predict 2020 virtual event. And it, excuse me, it's my friend Ming Gong from a company called UST Global. Ming is another guy who's just really sharp as well. And he did a digital agility transformation manifesto framework and predictions. It's about 27 minutes. You don't want to miss it. Ming did just a great job on this. So have a listen to Ming's presentation on that. I think you'll enjoy it. I'll be back with the news after that. And then for Monday, it is Monday, we will have a working from home fitness with Jeremy Jones. So you guys can maybe get a little exercise. And as usual, we'll break that out and have it available on TechStrong TV and on the OTT channels as a separate item. So you can do that at night or later or whenever it's comfortable and convenient for you. Then we'll turn things over to Charlene. Charlene has a guest, Cillian Kiran of Ethica. And she actually has two today, Charlene. She also has Ravi Lachman and Tiffany, I think it's Joshka from Harness.io, doing great things at Harness. And then it's over to the Analyst Corner with Mitch. Mitchell actually has a couple of both a video and then a new flash poll that he'll be launching today, as he does every week. And then I think we're going to have Mike Vizard on for his channels. What's going on in the channel with all this? So it's another action-packed show. We're going to be right back in a minute. Just stand by.
Tech is strong. We may be working from home, but tech goes on. Tech will continue to collaborate. Tech will continue to communicate. Tech is strong. Join us for TechStrong Con, June 4th, 12 hours strong, TechStrong. Featuring John Bacha-Galupe Willis, Shannon Leitz, William Hurley, Jasmine James, Kat Swatell, Cornelia Davis, James Wickett, Courtney Kistler, Damon Edwards. Live Q&A with speakers, exhibit halls, and more. Free, but register before spots fill at techstrongcon.com.
Okay, back here in the TechStrong studios. As I mentioned earlier, our first interview today is with Ariel Asaraf. He's the CEO at CoreLogics. And, CoreLogics is a company that is trying to bring some reasonable insight into log analysis. We've gone through a kind of a log explosion, a Cambrian explosion of logs over the last, let's say, 10 years, where we log everything. And it's great. The problem is we have so many logs and so many log files. How do we make heads or tails of it and focus in on what's actionable and important to us? And this is a problem CoreLogics have been working on. They've got some great customers, big customers, but it's really about applying kind of machine learning to logs. So have a listen to Ariel's interview here. Maybe we can all learn something on how do we manage our logs better.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us on this segment of TechStrong TV. I'm really happy to have Ariel Asaraf of CoreLogics as our guest here today. CoreLogics is a company that's bringing some intelligence, machine learning to logs and making sense of them. Ariel, I'm going to let you tell us about CoreLogics and what you guys do. How's that? Welcome.
Thank you. We started the company about 5 years ago, 2015, with the goal of really simplifying log data and helping companies don't get lost in their data, because companies are just generating so much data. Ever since we've built our business to over 1,000 customers worldwide, raised over $17 million, and have companies using CoreLogics from the largest enterprises, more traditional companies like Lufthansa or Caesar's Palace, and down to those hip companies, cloud, SaaS, internet companies like Monday, Fiverr, Postman, and many, many more.
Excellent. And of course, Ariel, we should just spend a moment or two on the thing about logs, whether you're an old line company like a Lufthansa or Caesars or manufacturing or whatever, versus, a new born in the cloud SaaS kind of organization, the problem around logs remains, right? And these older line companies, we see it in DevOps. They need to transform, digital transformation. They need to move to the cloud. They need to adopt modern practices. And when they do, they have the same log problems we all do, which is we want to collect everything, right? That's the first kind of impulse. If I learned in tech early on when I was founding my companies that the mantra is we measure everything could be measured, and we measure everything. It's that same mantra for logs. We log everything and we keep every log. But what's happened is we found out that's great, right? Especially in forensics, something happened. Like we just read the World Health Organization had a breach, and Bill Gates Foundation had a breach, and we can go in and mine the logs for forensics. But on a day-to-day operational basis, there's just too much information. So we need core logics. We need this log aggregation and analysis to make it usable, operationable, actionable. And you mentioned you guys use machine learning to accomplish this. Let's talk a little bit. What does that mean? Explain to our audience what it is exactly you're doing there.
Of course. First of all, to your point, I agree 100%. Those traditional companies, the good ones don't exist anymore. They go to cloud, they digitalize, they have strong online presence, and it's a big part of their business. And as they move to that digital world, they generate a lot of data. It's very hard for them to triage whether a problem is coming from their move to the cloud, or whether a problem is coming from an in-app or one of their microservices. And then tools like CoreLogix being able to automatically and proactively notify them on important things are even more critical. When we talk about machine learning and the huge amounts of data that people process, you need to look a little at the history when this world started a few years ago. Like you mentioned, the biggest problem was I want to collect everything. And if you look at reports from research institutes on logging and DevOps and IT 5-6 years ago, you'd see that in all surveys, people mention, I need to collect everything, I need to parse, I need a way to manage that big data. And with time, we're seeing a movement towards I need actionable insights, I need to reduce costs, I need to make it more efficient because the ROI that companies are currently getting from their logs is not enough. So we took that problem of having a lot of data, it's a big thing to talk about, and we broke it into 3 parts. First of all, you want to reduce the amount of data that the user needs to look at. Second of all, you need to correlate data from different components, from different microservices, and understand behaviors, internal processes. And third, you need to understand the global trends of the system. So the first algorithm, or the first stage of the algorithm, is what we call logregation. It's automatically clustering the data. So we take that huge amount of records, understand their unique appearances, what are the constants, what are the variables, and then we basically disconnect big data from log data, because now it doesn't matter how many lines of log you produce, it matters how many lines of logs you put in your code, because I always take you to that unique number. And then now the fun starts. Now we learn their behavior. We understand whether an error is new or not, whether it should happen in that time of the day or not, whether this specific log should arrive at 2 a.m. on a Saturday, how its parameters should look like, what parameters should arrive together, anything around that pattern. Then the next step, understanding relationships between patterns, sequences. So now we know that log A should always arrive with log B and C, and we know how to alert you once that intimate flow in your application is broken. So we basically learn each application separately and understand its internal flows. And then the third part is using our knowledge on the market and knowing what's important to customers. So we know that your API response trends are important, exception trends are important, error trends are important, latency is important, and we basically track these trends across all your applications and components and notify you automatically once one of these parameters deviates. So for instance, if you have a spike of errors for a specific component that is unusual for this day and hour, we'll notify you. If one of your API endpoints suddenly returns more 400s, 500s than the usual, we'll notify you. And then that answers what to search, where to search, and when to search. But then comes the next question: why are things happening? And most of the time, it's changes. So we integrate with the CI/CD pipeline, And whenever we get a new version sent to CoralLogix, a new tag to CoralLogix, we basically benchmark the behavior of the system prior and after that tag and tell our customers, these flows were broken because of this version, this error was created by this code, this new error trend or this bad API response were created by this configuration change. So that way we're giving them strong context and answering everything from what to search, where to search, when to search, and why is something broken. So that's how we incorporate machine learning to empower our users.
So first of all, I got to tell you, one of the best definitions of how machine learning works in real life that I've heard in a long time. So thank you for that. Secondly, what's interesting here is, when we look at what's the mission for log analysis, right? And for too many people, it becomes almost a security function, forensics, as we say. It's good to have it enunciated here so clearly of how it helps us in our CI/CD pipeline, right? It's yet another tool in this software development lifecycle that helps us. And it's not just troubleshooting when something goes wrong. It's really optimizing, right? And everything else here as we the folks at CloudBees have this term SDN, software delivery management. It's one of these management tools that when we look at this, we can see the flow of the software of that CI/CD pipeline, and it's direct correlation. So it's great there. How is this a SaaS kind of offering, Ariel, or is this everyone has their own? How's it offered? How's it brought to market?
We have a few different models. We have a full SaaS offering, self-serve, multi-tenant, very easy to onboard, compliant, scaled, secure. We have private clusters hosted with us. So if a customer wants to have his private servers, and we know how to do private deployments on customers' AWS environments. We do that with some of the world's largest companies. I'm talking Fortune 10, that we can't mention their names. So we have various models. I want to add one point to what you mentioned about CI/CD because it is 100% correct, and I forgot to mention it. It's not only troubleshooting, it's optimizing, it's getting audit on your CI/CD, optimizing the deployments themselves, getting the timing of deployments. And we've created a strong partnership with both Circle CI and CloudBees, the creator of Jenkins, with built-in plugins, basically, to help their users accelerate that. And a lot of news around that area are to come.
Excellent. Good point. So Ignacio, look, every interview we're doing now, we got to bring it up. Everyone's working from home, this COVID situation. What effect has that had on the business, on you and the team there? And how do you see that going forward?
Yeah, it's been, at the beginning, it was kind of frightening. Have a lot of employees, everyone are now distributed at home. You can't even do like team meetings or gatherings that companies that are used to working from home do occasionally. So it was kind of intimidating to see whether we can adapt, and you don't have time to plan. So it was like suddenly everyone has to stay home from tomorrow. So at the first couple of days, we tried different tools and we tried different approaches. And at the end, we actually found out an amazing tool that really changed how we work from home. It's initially for gamers, not for workspaces. It's called Discord. And the concept of Discord is, if you think about like a Slack app where you have different channels. So each channel is a room, and these are voice channels, not text. So I can basically click a room and start talking and everyone hear me in that room. And then we have, like, each team has his room. We have meeting rooms. You can, of course, share your screen or do a video chat or whatever you want. And then whenever I need to speak to someone, I just click his room and say, hey, Johnny, what's up? I need to talk to you about this and that. He's like, okay, let's go to David, ask him. We both go to his room and start talking. And anyone else that doesn't want to hear you, they just mute. And they made it such a real life experience that if I'm listening to Spotify, then people can see what I'm listening to in my room and join my room and start listening to music too.
The same music as well. Very cool. How do you spell that?
Discord, Discord.
So it's probably discord.com or something. Very cool. Yeah, that sounds good. We'll have to check that out.
For sure. Yeah. It's,
Good for you.
It's huge, but not in workspaces. And I think now in working from home, for us, we still use Slack, obviously, for text and for operations channels and so on. But for the day-to-day communication, it was a game changer.
One of the things we're seeing, and I'm seeing it even here at MediaOps, our own company, because I'm in our studio. I have our video person with us, but the rest of the company's all working from home, and we too. We have Zoom, we have Slack, we have, all the usual suspects that we communicate with, work common applications. The problem is I need one to rule them all, right? If I have 12 tabs, 15 tabs on my browser open all the time for all of these different tools and communications we're using. I suspect the longer we work from home in this, we'll probably boil it down, and maybe we'll see something like a Discord come up, and this may be a catalyst for them jumping out of the gamer space into mainstream and never look back.
And they dominate the gamer space, but didn't get to workspaces. And one other thing that I noticed, and you probably noticed that too, is a day full of meetings, full of Zoom meetings, is much more draining than a day full of physical meetings. You're actually exhausted after that day.
Yeah, no. Tell me, I do 4 or 5 of these a day on Zoom, Ariel. So yeah, I know all about it. We had this discussion actually this morning with my team, in that we all seem to be doing meetings from early in the morning till late at night, whether they're internal team meetings or external with let's say you or partners and sponsors and so forth. And it's really important. So I worked from home for years before I started MediaOps. It's really important that you have an on-off switch. There's got to be a time where you say, I'm done for the day. I need to, do my thing here. And that's what it's important for people to recognize that.
That's very hard to do.
Burn out.
It is hard. It's hard for me to do, and I'm conscious of it, and it's hard. People who aren't used to this, it's yet harder. Anyway, hey, I appreciate you coming on and giving us a little background on CoreLogix. I wish you the best of luck. We're going to be doing this for a while, I think. Maybe you can come back on and give us an update, and we can dive deeper into, analysis and it's on the CI/CD pipeline. Stay away from the troubleshooting aspect of it. How do we optimize that CI/CD pipeline using log analysis?
In June, so we'll probably speak then, I guess.
All right. Ariel Asaraf, CoreLogix here on TechStrong TV. Ariel, thank you.
Thank you, Alan. That was great. Thank you. Have a good day.
All right. For TechStrong TV, this is Alan Schimmel. We'll be right back with our next guest. All right. So our next up for today's show is an interview with my friend Chenzi Wang. And I'm going to tell you, I've led a rather, I think, blessed life, especially as it relates to the cybersecurity field, InfoSec field. I've had the honor of meeting so many really bright, sharp people who, just from kind of associating with them and listening to them, you learn from. My next guest, Chenzi Wang, is someone like that. She's just, first of all, one of the nicest people you'll meet. But, it's Dr. Chenzi Wang. She's a PhD. She's had such a well-rounded resume of positions, from the analyst side, the end-user space, the vendor space, now a venture capitalist. She's just really... I'm proud to call her a friend, and I'll leave it at that. Anyway, I sat down with Chenzi from her home in the Bay Area, and we had a great talk about what's going on and what does she think this will mean in the venture capital space and for companies looking to raise money, this whole COVID thing. So here's my discussion with Dr. Chenzi Wang.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining us on this segment for TechStrong TV. I'm really happy to be joined by my friend, Chenzi Wang. For those of you from Security Boulevard or from the security industry, Chenzi really doesn't need any introduction. But let me just give you, for those maybe who don't know Chenzi. Chenzi's been an analyst, an SVP at security vendors, security executive at industry companies, large organizations. She's a board member of public companies. She was founded one of an all-women or a women-led venture capital firm called Rain Capital. Chenzi has a long list of of accomplishments, and I didn't mention she's actually Dr. Chenzi Wang, right, with a PhD. So Chenzi, I hope I don't embarrass you. I apologize if I did. But welcome and thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Alan.
I got to tell you, you look so comfortable and that background is so pretty. It almost makes working from home worthwhile, It's not such a bad thing. So congratulations. I guess you of course are out in the Bay Area in the Valley, or are you up in Oregon now?
I'm in Bay Area. I thought I'd record it outside to give a little bit interesting background. I'm on a Chromebook. I can't run the virtual background of Zoom, so I just try to find an interesting physical background to do these calls from.
You know what? I think this is better than any virtual background you're going to have in Zoom, so that's good. So Chenzi, let's jump right into it. So this is the 5th or 6th week that we are doing TechStrong TV. So we're in week 5 or 6 now of this, quarantine state where we're trying to flatten the curve. And it's working in a lot of places. I think, thank God we're seeing some progress here, though it's too early to, let our guard down. But at the same time, we saw this terrible pandemic of this COVID disease and the coronavirus. We've also seen a pandemic of cyber incidents, right? Look, just scanning the headlines from, a couple days, we had a breach at the World Health Organization, a breach at the Gates Foundation, a breach of the SBA of small businesses. I've seen something like the spam numbers around COVID-19 subjects are up a ridiculous amount, like hundreds of percents. The bad guys never miss an opportunity to take advantage of a catastrophe, do they? And
it's true.
So once again, cybersecurity is at the forefront of what do we, how do we deal with this? It's not enough that we're worried about getting sick. It's not enough that we're kind of locked in our houses. Now we have to be on guard, extra on guard.
Yes.
Cyber stuff. What do you think?
Well, it's a new situation that caught many people off guard, right? So I think at the end of last year, we tell these companies that everybody's going to be working from home in March. Everybody's like, nah, it's not going to happen, right? So many of them didn't have the infrastructure and the security measures come with it to basically make that transition easily. So when you're caught off guard, you essentially have to put out fires. So like, how do I have my VPN gateway at a capacity that is enough to support my tens of thousands of employees who are suddenly all working from home versus, only 10% or 20% of them are coming in from outside. So infrastructure requirements changed significantly. And we know that whenever infrastructure change, security requirements change and security threat landscape and threat surface really change. And so that really puts a lot of pressure on security teams to really step up and making sure the current situation is taken care of. And that, to be honest, it takes away from some of the other more strategic things that the people are doing. And that in the end is not going to be a great thing for us, right? So it's a short-term goals taking away from longer-term initiatives. So we'll see how this shake out in the end. But a lot of people are are just surviving right now in terms of getting security to an acceptable stage.
You're right. I think you're right. In the middle of the fire, you can't be buying or changing up your firefighting equipment, right? You're stuck with someone once said, Donald Rumsfeld said in I think it was the Iraq War, you go to war with the army you have, not the army you want. And so many people, right, are dealing with that. But I question, because what we're seeing is companies that were more cloud native, companies that were more agile, DevOps, were seem to be anyway, in a better place in terms of dealing with this. So like the whole notion of VPNing back in to the mothership to go out to SaaS apps that are up in the cloud.
Yeah.
When this is all over and done, do you think companies reevaluate, how their infrastructure is set up, and do we need that anymore?
Yeah, absolutely. I think of this pandemic as a violent disruption to the current economy, and also as a violent disruption to the current operating model for a lot of companies, IT, right? So look at companies like Google, who went from centralized campuses to everybody working from home without a glitch, because they're cloud native, and they have the infrastructure set up and security set up ready to go, even long before this epidemic. And other companies, more traditional, having more traditional infrastructure and culture in terms of IT operations, are having a hard time. So I think at the end of it, we will see an accelerated pace to cloud and cloud native, simply because we need to make this thing work. And that is probably one of the positive things that could come out of this. And if your company survives, that is. So that to me is an indication of why modern computing models need to be adopted faster and at a more accelerated pace. And I'm hoping that some companies will do it under this pressure, will do it faster than they normally would have.
I hope so. But like I said, I think it's hard to switch horses mid-race, right? And so what we might see is short term, get us through this instant, period, and then we'll see a huge change in methodologies and technologies going forward. But Chenzi, for people who are working from home now, we live in the security field bubble where, of course, we're on guard, and of course we're, hypersensitive to cybersecurity. But a lot of people watching this aren't. And what advice can you give either individuals or non cyber companies in what they can do to try to just get through this, right? Is intact, assuming you don't run out of cash or anything else, right? But to get through this intact and safe cyber-wise.
In terms of cyber,
Yeah.
So I think one of the things to really look at is how do you make sure you have a way to prevent your employees from making mistakes that are in the old days. If they make a mistake behind the firewall, maybe there are measures of which that can prevent that from becoming a big disaster. Now today they're potentially using their own equipment, they're using their home network. Things could be disrupting at a larger scale, right? So how do you really implement this zero trust model without going all the way to changing everything you have in terms of infrastructure in your tech stack is a big question. So can we do a little bit things such as increasing authentication methods and doing more implementing second factor in a more extensive way, so that get us through a few months of everybody is coming in from outside the firewall. And then using that as a catalyst to really change to a cloud native, to a zero trust model. That is what the opportunity is. So I think of, I talked to a lot of companies today about how they are dealing with this. And for instance, I'm sitting on public board, and I also talked to the head of IT for that company to understand the response that the IT team is implementing, right? So to me, in general, there are probably three different kinds of companies. One is completely caught off guard and really kind of running around with a chicken with a head cut off and didn't know what to do. The second category is having a plan, but it still is ad hoc, right? So trying to just survive. And the third category of companies, actually really interesting, is they've already had much of the infrastructure and security measures done for switching to a completely remote operation model. And they're using this period as an opportunity to really find the places where they can actually benefit and moving to a more efficient model, right? So they're looking for gaps in the infrastructure to get rid of so that they could be more efficient. They're looking for gaps in productivity where they can implement small measures to increase productivity. And those companies, I think, will survive, not only will survive, will come out stronger than before.
Yeah, I agree with you. We see that. I'm going to ask you to put your VC hat on for a moment here. And we're going to take that illustration or that example that you just spoke about and take it beyond cyber to business in general. Here at Media Ops, we're seeing companies also in those same three camps. There are some companies who are saying, look, I just want to conserve cash and burn, and so I'm cutting back my marketing, I'm cutting back my sales, I'm cutting back R&D, and I just want to get through this and then I'll figure it out on the other side, right? Then there are some companies that I think they're going to be victims in that they're not taking charge of their own destiny one way or the other. They're just kind of going through the motions, right? Just one day at a time and seeing what happens, trying to muddle through it. And then there are some companies who say, look, yeah, it's not perfect out there. We've got a lot of problems we're dealing with, but there's an opportunity here. And so there's an opportunity here. And they are pedal to the metal.
Yeah.
What do you, as an investor, what do you want your companies to do?
So what I want my companies to do is having a plan that is strategic in the sense that not only the goal of the plan is not to minimize damage at the end of this. The goal of the plan is to come out as a more efficient, more productive company that is in a better position to scale up your business. Now, how to do that? Right now is the time to be investing in long-term initiatives that you haven't had time to do, right? So working on the product features that you think will be really making a quality change to your product, to build, to recruit the type of people that you may have trouble recruiting in the past. And I've seen this a lot now recently is a lot of good people are suddenly out of a job for whatever reasons. And it's a good time to recruit, to build a quality team, build a quality product. And for people like me and a few other of my friends, it's time to really think, to really take a hypothesis, whether that be a new technology or emerging trend, and really think about how that impacts the industry and impact my job, and to reflect and to analyze and to write. So actually writing a lot more now. You're looking at the spot that I'm sitting down and writing every day, and doing calls, doing research. And I actually didn't really have the luxury to do that for over a year now, is just running from things to things. So having that sort of self-reflection to step back and say, what are the most important things for me to do during this period of time so I can come out stronger, is the strategy, is the plan that I want my companies to have.
Got it. Makes sense. I mean, I will tell you too, it is a time to, Chenzi, I've been in business a long time, right? I went through the dot-com bubble. I went through the dot-com bubble burst. I saw the net 2.0, if you will, rise up. And then 2008-9, the Great Recession. I left my last venture-backed company then and started Media Ops in 2013. No venture-backed. And I've, look, let's face it, for the last 10 years, we haven't had bad times in the world, let alone in the tech industry. The economy has been relatively strong for 10 years. There's a lot of people who don't know any different. This is the first time they're seeing this sort of bump in the road in their work careers, and they're getting a little freaked out. Every time I've been through one of these, Chenzis, there are winners and losers, and the winners are never by accident. The losers are sometimes, but the winners aren't. The winners win because they do the things you're talking about, right? This is the time to do R&D. It is the time to look at new things, to get to those projects that maybe you didn't have time before. So I hope that's what we'll see coming out of this.
Yeah, I think you're right. So the ones that really invest in solidifying their foundational technology and foundational knowledge base, depending on the line of business you're in, I think will come out of this stronger. And as you said, it's not by accident.
Right. Unfortunately, that's my take on it. I mean, that's one of the reasons we're doing this TechStrong TV thing. We spun it up. We're getting a bunch of people watching it every day. I don't know if we'll do it all year, because my team was talking about it today. What happens when we do go back out on the road? Who's going to do this every day? But we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. We'll start putting in some. There's always reruns, but
you do it on the road. You do it from a hotel room. Yeah, you do it from a coffee shop. You just do it. I think.
I think the world needs it.
Yeah,
right?
and the things that you do now, some of it will carry afterwards. I think, I talked to some of my friends who are working remotely from home and in a pretty productive way. And they're saying that there will be less reasons for them to go back to the office
across the board.
5 days. Yeah, across board, right, 5 days a week. So how do you, so it'll be a new model, new world, and we have to adapt.
But so new is constant for us, and change is constant, and tech marches. It's always marching on. That's the kind of probably the story of our lifetime in business. Chenzi, we're almost out of time. I want to thank you for joining us. You look great, by the way, out there. I love besides the background, you're looking great.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Stay safe, stay strong, and your family. I always enjoy watching your husband teaching your son, not algebra, calculus, and so forth. So that always inspires me. And just so your son, of course, is not in college doing calculus. I don't even think he's in middle school yet, right? He's
10.
He's in grammar school. So that's good stuff. But anyway, Chenzi Wang, always a pleasure to have you on. We will be back in touch soon. And thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Alan.
All right.
Bye.
All right. This is Alan Schimmel. You just heard from Chenzi Wang here on TechStrong TV. We'll be back soon with our next guest.
ContainerJournal.com is the leading online destination for centralized computing-related content. ContainerJournal.com covers all aspects of software containers, from container management, data management for containers, container security, networking for containers, to the entire container ecosystem, Kubernetes, microservices, serverless, and more. ContainerJournal.com has the largest selection of container-related news, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.containerjournal.com to learn more. ContainerJournal.com is operated by MediaOps Inc., the team behind DevOps.com, Digital Anarchist, SecurityBoulevard.com, DevOps Connect, and DevOpsDozen.com.
Hey everyone, back here at the TechStrong TV studios. Hope you enjoyed the Chenzi Wang interview. Chenzi's just great. I could talk to her all day. Our next segment, though, is our bit of old for today's show. Not that old. It comes from our Predict 2020 virtual event, which was just this past January. And by the way, you know, that whole environment is still up. If you want to see what our virtual events look like at MediaOps, go to predict2020.io. You can register. It's not live anymore, so you can't chat with people, but you can see everything else in there. Speaking of virtual events, we did one just last week with the folks at White Source called securecoding.com, at securecoding.com. This might have been, I think, the sharpest one we've ever done. I'd encourage you to go log in there and take a look at that one as well. It's pretty cool. Anyway, though, this next session comes to us from Predict 2020. It's my friend Ming Gong, who's with UST Global. Ming is VP Cloud and Transformation over there. And he did this presentation, and it really blew my socks off. It's titled Digital Agility Transformation Manifesto, Framework and Predictions. And Ming just lays out the case, and this is before COVID and everything, obviously, or before we knew about it, and it just lays out the case for why you want to start your digital transformation, why you want to migrate to cloud, how to get there, what to do, what's the road paths. Ming and his team are just, they're so busy, and you can see why when you see how well this is laid out. So here's Ming Gong from UST Global.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for attending the session. I want to wish everyone a happy new year and a prosperous 2020 and beyond. My name is Ming Gong. I'm a vice president at UST Global. I lead our digital agility platform and solutions group. We specialize in helping our customers to unleash the digital agility by helping them with many different areas, such as legacy modernization, cloud migration, cloud native development, DevOps, DevSecOps transformation. Today's topic actually is near dear to my heart. Let me share my screen with you real quick. We'll be talking about how companies can really help to accelerate the digital agility transformation in order to really compete effectively and also, more importantly, thrive in today's very ultra competitive and rapidly changing environment. And so some of the things that we'll cover today is some of the major industry trends that we have seen. I also will be talking about some of the kind of lessons learned or insights that have gained from enabling our customers on the transformation journey. And lastly, we're hoping to share some information, additional insights and framework that we have developed for our customers to kind of help them navigate the complexity of transformation. So perhaps you can take some of the lessons learned and incorporate into your program design. Before we talk about the details of framework, I'd like to share some of the industry trend with you that's helping to shape what's to come in 2020 and beyond. What you guys see on the screen here is the Forrester forecast in 2019. They estimated $250 billion was spent in public cloud in 2019. And that number is estimated to grow to $430 billion in 3 years from now in 2022, increase of 72%. A majority of the growth is coming from three main areas: application, platform, and infrastructure services. And both platform and infrastructure services are growing at triple-digit rate for the next 3 years. And this is very consistent with what we see in the trenches as well. And I'm sure you guys are aware, especially recently, that Microsoft is being extremely aggressive, signing very large deals with many large companies, right? Especially in the retail sector as well as the telecom sector. Because of that, that renewal kind of corporate commitment is helping to accelerate the journey to migrate the entire enterprise workload to the cloud. So that certainly is reinforcing this forecast from the Forresters. And as companies develop multi-cloud strategy and hybrid cloud strategy, and that level of complexity, and most of them do, by the way, and that level of complexity, it's also enticing the companies to looking for kind of platform solutions that can help them to navigate the complexity of that environment, as well as kind of shield them from the kind of rapidly changing platforms. So, because ultimately they want to be able to focus on what they do best, which is the kind of continue to innovate on the business strategies, right? Business competitive advantages, rather than struggling and dealing with the underlying platform changes. The next trend we're going to look at is the cloud consulting and implementation spend. The forecast coming from Gartner in 2019, and they estimated about $123 billion to spend in those two areas in 2019. And the number is estimated to grow to about $183 billion, a 50% increase in the next 3 years. That massive increase is happening in two main areas: cloud migration and cloud consulting. And as we talked about earlier, there's definitely a massive change in terms of how the willingness of company to migrate the entire enterprise workload to the cloud, despite all the challenges. And the other trend that's kind of playing in this favor is that only 20% of all enterprise workload are in the cloud today. So which means the rest of 80%, there's a massive opportunity associated with that. And that's what you see on the trend here, is company continue to accelerate their spend in the cloud migration, and cloud consulting goes along with that. Key themes that we're observing, and confirmed by all the major research reports, is that many enterprise customers are questioning the ROI from the large investment they have made in the past couple of years on the cloud journey. Many of them are simply not seeing the value that the whole program is promised to deliver at the beginning. And there's many reasons. Some of the key reasons are, in the last few years when customer is trying to migrate to the cloud, they tend to focus the volume over value. What that means is they're more concerned about, hey, let's get X number of applications and percentage into the cloud, regardless how we get there, right? And they focus less on the legacy modernization, which is necessary if you want to truly take advantage of what cloud has to offer. And so that level of complexity, both technologically and organizationally, are causing the cost overruns in both migration effort as well as ongoing operations. And because customers are taking more of a lift and shift approach in the past few years, they're not focusing too much or enough on the target operating model to make sure it's optimized. And because of that, they struggle with security vulnerabilities and poor performances once they're able to shift some of the workloads to the cloud. And again, back to, because they're taking a lift and shift approach predominantly, they're not really benefiting from all the cloud native services and all the benefit they have to offer. And the other mega issue that dealing with that's slowing everything down is there's a tremendous amount of the talent shortage across the entire industry, regardless of for the companies or the service providers or even technology vendors. Everyone's having such a challenge trying to find the proper talent in order to help them accelerate the journey. Now, where do we go from here? Where we're seeing happening, and it's already we already see it on the ground, there's definitely a massive shift from across all the enterprise customers. They start focusing on the value realization. So it's switching focus from the volume to the value, right? And because of that, they are reevaluating that kind of strategy. They recalibrate it to make sure they can realize the value while still meeting the corporate commitments. And we're also seeing significant increase in effort on legacy modernization and cloud native development, because ultimately that's the best way for them to realize the benefit and realize the business objectives that they have set out for themselves. And final part is that pervasive open partnership, and we see that trend continue strongly. Because if you think about the entire world has to be transformed, right, into the new world. That massive amount of the kind of scope of a level of effort require everyone in the industry to kind of play together in order to make this happen. So the trend we have seen, the open source movement, which has become very strong over the past few years, we absolutely see that trend continues. But more importantly, besides the kind of partnerships going to continue to grow between the companies and the service providers and the technology vendors, We also seeing more partnerships going to be formed between traditionally the competitors, right? Because a lot of times the competitors need to come together to adopt the industry standard in order to really kind of elevate the entire industry and kind of propel that forward at a much rapid rate. Some of the key technology trends. Containers and Kubernetes are definitely here to stay. All of our customers are either already embarked on that journey or they have it in their strategic plan to implement them this year and beyond. The reason is pretty straightforward, right? Besides all the obvious benefit come with containerization and Kubernetes management platform, all the companies usually have a multi-cloud, hybrid cloud strategy. So because of that complexity, the common denominator is really the containerization and using Kubernetes to manage all the containers in order to go cross-cloud in a very straightforward fashion. So because of that, all the companies start implementing that. And as companies become more mature in their cloud practice, they also start exploring more what serverless and other kind of cloud native services has to offer. And also because of the complexity of the using hybrid cloud and multi-cloud, company also looking for tooling, from tooling perspective, ability to support multiple clouds. So they wanted that one single pane of glass, if you will, no matter where the cloud assets reside, they want to be able to not only see them, but also manage them effectively regardless where they are. And finally, as companies start adapting more kind of data analytics capability, cloud data management services become a very popular and a hot item starting really last year, and we certainly see that trend continues for the foreseeable future. To help our customers navigate this complexity of the transformation journey, we developed a holistic framework and approach to help them accelerate the value realization. A successful transformation requires a holistic approach, because when you talk about fundamentally transforming how a business operates or coming up with a new business offering or the product offering, it requires a lot more than just a technology upgrade. You also need to make sure that you can refine your business processes, you're upskilling your people so they can actually help to continue to change and operate in the target operating model. And more importantly, the company really need to kind of transform their culture into a more nimble and agile form where no matter how things change around them, they will have the necessary muscle memory to be able to adapt to the changes and as well as to seize the opportunities when the opportunity presents themselves. One question we frequently get from our customers is, how do you orchestrate and sustain a transformation that delivers compelling value continuously? And as you guys all know, deliver large-scale transformation is extremely hard, especially in today's environment where everything is changing so rapidly, technology-wise as well as organizationally. For example, the technology roadmap you laid out at the beginning of the program most likely will be obsolete by the end of the year one. So which means you're going to have to scramble and figure out how to incorporate the latest, greatest so you can actually reap the benefit of the technology innovation that's taking place around us, right? Organizationally, I have never seen such an increasing pace of change at the senior leadership level. And as you guys all know, as senior leadership changes, that frequently impact how the direction and how the program is being run. So for a transformation program to be effective, it really needs to be designed in such a way where it's decoupled from all the kind of primary elements, and it's going to change very frequently, right? We talked about technology, we talked about organization. So to help with that, our team come up with a Digital Agility Transformation Manifesto. It's basically a set of principles that we have synthesized based on all of our experiences helping other customers to transform. And it's all about what works, what doesn't work, and what are the accelerators. In the center of the manifesto is we use the metaphor of a flywheel. To represent the idea that we want to create a self-sustaining flywheel of transformation that once you set it in motion, it will continuously moving forward and generate momentum with minimum effort. The way you interpret the flywheel is actually pretty straightforward. If you're familiar with the Agile Manifesto, it reads the exact same way. So value over volume, for example. What this means is that as you transform, it's important to measure how you're progressing. for things such as, how many teams were you able to enable to become an agile teams? How many DevOps pipeline were you able to create? While those information are all important, but the business value associated with those changes are even more important. So for example, how much release frequency has been improved because of DevOps automation? How many how many features is your team able to deliver because they're adapting kind of the agile way of operation, right? So all those things has a direct impact to the business value, which make them a lot more important. So value over volume, the way you read it is, while volume is important, value even more so. Pull over push. What this means is that for a successful transformation program, you want to design it in such a way where the environment entice your employees to want to embrace change rather than resisting change, because otherwise you'd be fighting the uphill battle the whole way, and it's not going to work. Iterative over big bang. We all know for the large enterprises, big bang approach rarely works because it takes so long to realize any kind of benefit. And as we mentioned earlier, things are changing way too rapidly for any kind of big bang approach to really stay true as time goes on. So, and on top of that, all the companies have limited resources, right? All those resource constraints really forces company to have to focus on energy on things that truly matters, which means the ones that can truly deliver business value to the company. Transparency over silos. We all know when company operating silos, it's extremely difficult to share best practices, to drive synergies across all the transformation effort that's happening. And very often you introduce so much waste into value stream that no wonder companies are asking the question, where the value coming from? Active calibration over punitive measurement. This is the important point where, even though it's important to have an effective metrics program in place, how you use it is actually just as critical. So if you use the metrics to punish people for seemingly underperforming, you're going to have an opposite effect, because people are always smarter than the process. So once they figure it out, hey, Big Brother is watching over my shoulder, they're going to be trying to figure out a way to game the system, right? That's counterproductive. Instead, you should be using the metrics to proactively monitor how you're transforming, so you can actively calibrate your approach to make sure they maximize the effect. Pragmatism over dogmatism. Enterprises are complex. There's no one-size-fits-all solution. As such, enterprise should be focusing on developing guardrails to ensure that all the teams across the entire organization are aligning to the true north. At the same time, you don't want to be overly prescriptive, because you want to give the team flexibility so they can have distributed innovation and they can tailor the model to work for them the best. Culture, talent over process and headcount. Enough said, right? None of transformation can be successful without the culture and the talent to go along with that. Reinvest over realization. That's also another important point where, as company reap the benefit from the transformation, it's very important that we at least reinvest some portion of the benefit back into the transformation. Remember, the flywheel just cannot continue forever. It needs that little push over time to keep the momentum going. So reinvestment is actually quite important as well. Now let's bring it all together. To help our customer to kind of navigate the complexity of the transformation, we created this framework called the Monopoly Board of Digital Agility Transformation. The reason why we use Monopoly as the kind of the metaphor is because if you think about, in order to play a successful Monopoly game, the concept that you use is very similar to what you need to employ for the successful transformation as well. For example, when you play a successful Monopoly game, you constantly invest in building the foundation, right? Every time you go around the board, you bind up the utilities, you're building the structures so you can collect more rent, right? It's all about building the foundation. And every move that you make, you're constantly assessing the ROI that's associated with that move, right? Same thing with transformation. You need to look at what value you're producing from investing that money. And with Monopoly, you're also constantly assessing your risk to make sure you can mitigate the risk as early as possible, so the impact will be minimized. And with the transformation, it's the exact same thing. You want to identify what are those key risks, the major risks, and bring that forward, shift left, we call it, right? And just because once you address them, then you know the probability of success for the upcoming transformation will become improved. So that backlog is, so in the center of all that is the so-called value-focused transformation backlog. And this is a very critical concept because as we talked about earlier, the mega trend that's happening in industry is that majority of the enterprise are relooking their strategy to make sure that strategy will truly deliver the value that they expected. So in this backlog, the backlog could be consist of anything. It could be the application that needs to be modernized. It could be the teams that need to be modernized from waterfall to agile. So it really could be anything that you want to transform. But all of them will be evaluated based on what kind of benefit that they're delivering, right? So here are some of the key benefit levers, such as agility, quality, efficiency, and security, because all of them translates ultimately into increasing revenue, increasing profitability, increasing customer satisfaction, and security, right? So how you populate this backlog is through our forensics process. Now, the forensics, when we talk about forensics, the reason why we use that word forensic is because we need to look beyond just the one dimension, just one area, right? Because for you to truly understand what's going to deliver the business value, you have to look at from multiple dimensions. So for us, when we engage with our new customers, we usually look at from the systems perspective. We look at it from the organization perspective to look for any kind of a problem that's slowing down everything else. We're looking at it from the business strategy perspective to make sure that when you put all three dimensions together, you can actually triangulate the opportunities that can truly deliver the business value that's needed. Now, this forensics process will generate the initial seeding of the backlog. And before they get into backlog, they also will be prioritized through this prioritization funnel. So we listed some of the kind of key way you can actually prioritize the items. Obviously, there's many more, depends on the companies, right? But the important point is that as you're putting things into the backlog, they need to be continuously groomed to make sure they're prioritizing such a way there's stuff on top of the backlog that can deliver the most value, business value. So that will help your company to focus your limited resources. The next step is a strategic roadmap exercise, right? So this is all about, now, how do you take the opportunity that's being uncovered and understanding of where the company needs to go and the goals they need to meet, and align them all together into a strategic roadmap where you can help ensure that you continue to align to the true north. So as part of the roadmap exercise, you're looking at the defining of the transformation strategy. You're looking at what's the target operating model is going to be, right? That's more than just technology. It's also, you got a talent strategy, right? Because just because you're able to move something into the cloud does not mean you know how to operate it, or you have the capacity to operate it. So you got to make sure the talent strategy align with that. And also you got to establish a migration approach as well. So all those information kind of goes into secure funding, because once you get the funding based on the roadmap, now you have an established roadmap where you can start taking it forward. Now, as roadmap gets established, your roadmap has been laid out. Everything you do from this point forward is all going to be predicated on the backlog, right? So you don't just do things sequentially. You don't do things, big bang approach. It's all about taking a very iterative approach, but do so in a way where you're focused on delivering the most value first, based on the backlog. So the first place you're focusing on is foundational capabilities, because things will change. Your priority will change, business priority will change, but the foundational capability is the one that's going to outlast them all, right? So this is where you look at the target operating model. You want to implement and optimize them, change management, talent transformation program, and also you got to have a very effective metrics program if you want to know how things are progressing. Additionally, you need to look at implementing and optimizing, moving the company towards more of a product-centric delivery model, which has a distinct advantage of help a company to become more strategic in terms of their investment and how they operate. You definitely want to move towards the agile transformation, right? You want to optimize that. You want to optimize and implement DevOps practice as well as DevSecOps, so you can have making sure the code you're delivering have application security built in from day one. Quality engineering is huge, as you guys all know, in the DevOps world. Without test automation, your DevOps pipeline is not going to do anything for you. Now, developer transformation enablement as a service is one of the key things that we believe organization needs to develop, because one of the key disconnect that we see is that organizations usually have a good COE structure, and they have all the individual tower they need to enable, but they're always missing the middle part, which is the enablement function. Now, as you're building the foundational capabilities, you need to have a separate work stream focusing on the target platform. Because target platform will impact regardless if you're doing cloud native development or you're moving legacy world into the cloud, right? All of them relies on the stability and the comprehensiveness of your target platform. So this is where you establish a cloud native architecture. This is where you develop your container-based infrastructure. This is where you're leveraging the kind of cloud native services, the data services, the serverless functions. And of course, you need to develop the kind of observability capability to make sure that everything in the cloud, the assets-wise, are being monitored effectively. While you have a team working focused on the target platform, then you have a separate team start looking at the application level. This is where you, from the perspective of legacy modernization, you would perform the application disposition analysis first to make sure you understand, what group of applications should be, let's say, re-architected. What group of applications should be simply lift and shift because they're not strategic. What group of applications perhaps should be retired and replaced with a software as a service offering, right? So all those things, the decision needs to be made ahead of time before you start diving in and start working on it. And another part of the importance of the disposition analysis is you figure out different patterns that you need to make sure you can create the strategy around. So one of the key things during this phase is that as you identify those patterns, you execute very nimble, quick POC to make sure that whatever you put, your design, your architecture, your target environment will actually work for those patterns, right? Because once you confirm that works, now you're into a place where you're delivering value. So which means it's time to scale up your monetization effort. Now, as you're doing scaling the monetization effort, this is where you need to create your blueprint, you create a playbook, you update your create the kind of reusable component library. So everything that you have done as part of transformation, it gets reused and you don't have to repeat the same thing twice, right? That's the goal. With that in place, now you can help the team to kind of rinse and repeat for all the subsequent applications that follow the same pattern, right? Because you already proven out the pattern works. And now, as you continue to mature, for you to truly kind of scale this kind of a model across the entire organization is to develop the self-enablement capabilities. So that way you can actually empower each individual teams to be able that use the same pattern, simply can just follow it and just execute against it. As you're helping to kind of transition those applications into kind of business as usual, so the next phase is really about the operations now, right? Now, operating in the cloud is different than operating on-prem, right? So there's definitely different set of skills that's needed, different kind of capability needs to be built out. For example, besides cloud infrastructure management capability needs to be built out, you need to have a very robust security and governance in place, because especially when you start adapting multi-cloud, hybrid cloud, you have on-prem, public, private, you need to have a very effective solution that the model where you can have transparency over the entire assets that your company has. Same thing for DevOps and SRE. Those are kind of, especially the site reliability engineer, that's a new capability that if company doesn't have yet, needs to be built out if you want to truly operate effectively in the cloud. So as you can see, this framework is extremely comprehensive. It covers all bases, the entire journey for a customer to move from legacy where they are today to the future operating model. And today could be cloud, tomorrow could be something else, but the model will persist beyond the changes happening in the technology. We're at the end of our session. Thank you so much for attending, and thanks so much for listening. If you want to learn more, please feel free to reach out to us anytime. We're here to help you guys any way we can. Just reach out either through info@digitally.com, or you can reach out to me directly at ming.gong@ust-global.com. And again, thank you so much for listening, and looking forward to hear from you guys. Talk to you soon.
Hey, everyone. Okay. Hope you enjoyed that session for Predict 2020. And like I said, the entire Predict 2020 sessions are up in their entirety at predict2020.io, and if you want to go check more of them out there, you can. There's another good one by Charlie Betts from Forrester I'd recommend to you as well. Next up, I wanted to jump into today's headlines on the news. And again, as usual, it's not meant to be exhaustive. We've got a lot more stuff up there. But let me just highlight a couple of good articles I want to bring your way. Let's start over on the Boulevard, on Security Boulevard. We've got a good article by Mike Vizard. All these domains were popped up for the go back to work, liberate states and stuff that we see. And this is not meant to be a political thing. But Brian Krebs did a great expose on it on Krebs on security. He wrote 2 articles last week. And he originally, I think, kind of broke this story. But Mike's working with another vendor who's done a lot of research on it too. And it's funny how, all of these domains, and there's like over 50, there's one for every state, and there's a bunch for cities and everything else. But so many of them are traced back to like one person who may or may not be involved in it. This one of the persons said he was just doing it to prevent other people from using it for bad purposes. Other evidence indicates it goes to these 2 brothers who kind of are professional agitators, astroturfers as they call them. And it's a good article if you're interested in this kind of stuff, and I recommend it to you. Also on Security Boulevard, we have another article up, and this is, Zoom security, and let's not call it Zoom security. Video, online video and communication security is obviously a thing with all of us working remotely. And so maintaining meeting security during the coronavirus is the name of this article on Security Boulevard. And if you're looking for good tips and tricks on doing it right, I highly recommend that one. So 2 good articles out of the 50 or so that are on Security Boulevard. They're all pretty good. You can check them all out, but do check out those 2. Our Container Journal, I've got 2 other ones that I wanted to mention to you. First of all, is the folks over at Software AG have launched they've launched an app mesh over service mesh, right? So service, as you move to microservices, you need this mesh to kind of coordinate all of your services coming in. Well, they've now put an app mesh that sits on those service mesh. And interesting stuff is, again, as we see this whole new stack of containers and so forth moving forward. Secondly, we have Threat Stacks details common Kubernetes security issues on AWS. Might sound a little run-of-the-mill to you, but again, I think this is just part of the evolution and maturation of Kubernetes, whether it's on AWS. It's not that the AWS Kubernetes is any less or more secure than Kubernetes on GCP or Microsoft or any of them. It's just the maturation as we get better with container security. And then over on DevOps.com, we have 2. First is one by my friend Brendan Haynes over at Broadcom. He wrote one last week about have we gone overboard on metrics for software, and it was pretty controversial. It got a lot of play, a lot of comments and forth. Well, he's written sort of a follow-up to it, and it's called The Prescription to End the Mania of Software Metrics. You may agree or disagree, but check out the article. And if you disagree don't take it on me personally, but take it up with Brendan. But you could comment there, like all of our articles. We encourage comments. We encourage discussion in the community. So read the article. Tell us what you think. Secondly, AI Ops 2020. IT talent is the game changer. Well, I think that was pretty much a 2019 article as well. But here's the thing I am going to tell you. With the current economic upheaval that this coronavirus is causing, this is a great time to find talent. People, unfortunately, not because of any of their performance or anything, may be losing their jobs as companies contract. Though, I don't know if that's a smart thing to do. But there is talent out there. So if you're looking to build up your team talent level as you take on things like AI ops, DevOps, digital transformation. Now's a good time to be hiring people. There's some really good people available. So do check out that article on devops.com. I just want to also have a quick reminder. Hey, TechStrongTV.slack.com. You get an invite at TechStrong.tv. We have my flash poll up. I'm interested in what you think about paying for virtual events. I have my own views on it. I don't want to cloud yours, but if you wouldn't mind just filling it out, or tweet me at ashimmy on Twitter. Do you think paying for to attend a virtual event is okay? What would you be willing to pay? Anyway, that's it for the news today. Our next section or session doesn't require you to do any thinking. It requires you to move your body a little bit. Our friend Jeremy Jones, who's a salesperson here at MediaOps, is also a personal group trainer, and he's been nice enough to film a couple of sessions every week. Today's session, Work From Home Fitness with Jeremy Jones, is next. Put on your sneakers, get ready to stretch, and we'll be back after that to introduce our rest of our show.
Hey guys, Jeremy here with MediaOps.com. We're here with another episode of our Work From Home series brought to you by MediaOps. And if you missed any of the previous ones, you could find those on TechStrong.tv. You could also find them on Roku, Apple TV, as well as Amazon Fire. All right, guys, so in this series, we're going to go through a warm-up. Then we'll go through the workout. Now, these workouts are designed so that everybody can use them, whether you're a beginner, you're intermediate, or you're a more advanced level. All right, guys, let's get into the warm-up. All right, guys, so for our warm-up today, we're going to do about 30 seconds of each exercise. We're going to go alternating lunges into hamstring stretches, right into anterior reaches, alternating toe touches, and knee grabs. Don't worry if you don't know the names of those quite yet. I'm going to go over them right now. All right, so starting out, we're going to go 30 seconds. We're going to go with our alternating lunges. All right, alternating each side. I'm going to step out nice and wide here. And notice how my momentum isn't carrying me forward. I'm trying to take it down, not forward. All right, so we'll do a few more of these, and then we'll jump into our next one, which are our hamstring stretches. Good, we'll go another 3, 2, one last one. Good, and for our hamstring stretches, we're gonna extend our leg, reach down, try to touch our toes. Reach down and try to touch our toes. Again, we're gonna go alternating. Good, again, it doesn't matter if you can't reach all the way down to touch your toes. If you come down to your knees, that's your range of motion, then that's fine. That's as far down as you can go. The important thing is that we get our hamstrings, which are the back of our legs, nice and warm, nice and loose. We'll one more here and jump right into our anterior reach. What I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna stand on my left foot. My right foot is gonna go back, my right arm is gonna go forward. And what you wanna do here, the trick here, is to pick a spot about 10 to 12 feet out in front of you, because your body's gonna go with your eyes directed. So you wanna reach out. We'll go one more on this side, and then we're gonna alternate over to the other side. Now for my more advanced, you can try to bring that knee forward, keeping your balance. Good, if you can't quite make it, just step down onto the ground, regain your balance. We'll go one more here, and then move on to our alternating toe touches. So I'm gonna have my feet wider than shoulder width apart, wide with my chest, and then reach down, touching my toe, clearing my hips out of the way. Very important, try to keep your legs as straight as possible. Get maximum stretch. Good, come up to the top, nice and wide, really get that chest nice and wide open. Good, we'll go 2 more, one on each side. Last one, and we'll finish it up with our knee grabs. I'm just gonna simply take my knee, try to pull it up and in to my chest, or as close as you can. If you can only get it here, that's fine. That's your range of motion. Again, the important thing is that we're getting a nice stretch. Stretching out our hips, hamstrings, glutes. Good, we'll go one more each side. Good. All right, guys, now that we're nice and loose, let's jump into the workout. All right, guys, so for today's workout, we've got a nice little circuit set up. We're gonna be doing 3 to 4 rounds. For my beginners, you're gonna be doing 12 reps of everything. For my intermediate, you're at 15 reps. For my more advanced, we're doing 20. All right, guys, if you've seen these before, you know how this works. We're gonna take one item that you can find in just about every household and use that to show how we can build a workout around that one tool. Today, we're gonna take a chair, all right? Nice and simple. What you wanna do, just make sure it's not a rolling chair. Make sure that it's gonna be nice and stable because we are gonna be using it to anchor ourselves on a few of these exercises. So first out, we're gonna do a circuit. So we're gonna go do tricep dips, chair squats, knee tucks, into push-ups, calf raises, and then finish it off with a chair plank. And again, we're gonna go 3 to 4 rounds. And let me show you what these exercises look like. All right, guys, we're gonna start out with our dips first. So I'm gonna start in a seated position, okay? I'm gonna put my hands just outside my hips, and I'm gonna extend my feet out. And then what I'm gonna do is slowly lower myself down and press up and up, okay? Try to go down as far as you feel comfortable without overextending yourself. All right, guys, next we're gonna do our chair squats. So we're gonna be very simple, sitting down into the chair, touching it, coming right back up. It's gonna really help with our squat form. Again, feet should be at least shoulder width apart. Next up, we're gonna do knee tucks, so where we're sitting in the chair, we're gonna move to the edge, lean back, bring our feet up, and we're going to bring those knees in, knee tuck, working that core. Next up, we're gonna do push-ups. I'm gonna show you a couple of different variations. So for my beginners, we're gonna do an incline. Okay, it's gonna be a little bit easier than your standard push-up. So again, making sure I've got a chair that's nice and firm, putting my hands along the outside, step up, nice tight core, trying not to get your butt too far out. We're gonna slowly lower to where we're coming down into mid-chest. All right, so for my more advanced, we're gonna do a decline push-up. So we're gonna put our hands out, step up, put our feet onto the chair. This is gonna give us a little bit more weight. So when we go down and press, down and then press. Next up, we're gonna be doing calf raises. So we're really just using the chair for a little bit of support. So what I'm gonna do here is gonna stand up on my toes, hold for a second, back down, up and squeeze, up and squeeze, up and squeeze. Good. For our last one, we're gonna be doing a chair plank. Okay, another core exercise. Forearms onto the chair, and I'm gonna step my feet back, and I'm gonna hold this position. Okay? All right, guys. Now that you know what we're gonna do, I'm gonna take you through a circuit. Again, we're gonna go 3 to 4 on the circuit. All right, guys, we're gonna go through our first circuit together. Now I'm gonna be doing 20 reps of each. Again, for my beginners, you're doing 12, intermediate 15. For my advanced, you're doing 20. All right, so we're gonna start out with our 20 dips. Again, my feet are extended. I'm gonna take it down at a decent pace, but not going too fast. Want it slow and controlled. Good, we're gonna go 20 here. Good, we're gonna 5 more. 4, 3, 2, 1, and good. Now we're gonna do our chair squats. Again, really helping me out with my form. Make sure I'm in a good position. Good. Really working those legs. Good, that's 10. We got 10 more to go. All right, 5 more. 4, 3, 2, 1, and into our knee tucks. Okay, again, I'm gonna lean forward here, tuck those knees in. Good, there's 10. 10 more. Very important to breathe. 2 more. Last one. Good. We're gonna move into our push-ups now. I'm gonna be doing the decline push-ups, but remember, you could do either standard push-ups or the incline, like I showed you earlier. So my feet are gonna go up onto the chair, slowly lower, and extend. Good. This makes it more challenging than your standard push-up. Good. 4 more. 3, 2, and 1. Good. Bringing it back up. Now we're going to move it into our calf raises. Good. Again, slowly extend, hold for a second, back down. Good. Now these are designed for you to move from one to the other. With those push-ups, really feeling in my chest, my triceps. I'm going to work the lower body while my upper body recovers. Good. We got 10 more. Good. 5 more. 4, 3, 2, and 1. Good. Next up, I'm gonna hold my chair plank. You can do this a couple different ways, guys. I'm just gonna count out in my head to 30. If you wanna grab a watch or Fitbit or whatever you might have to time this out. Or you can go a little bit longer for my more advanced. You can go hold it up for a minute or longer if you need. I'm just gonna count out to 30 in my head. Approximate that time. Good. Got another 10 seconds. Good, last 3, 2, and 1. Good. All right, guys, that's one circuit. I'm gonna take about a minute, recover, then I'm gonna go back and do my other 2 to 3 rounds. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed this. If you have any feedback, any questions, you can always reach out to me, email, love to hear your feedback. You can reach me at Jeremy, Jeremy, at devops.com. All right, guys, have a great one.
All right. Thanks, Jeremy. Hey, Jeremy lays it down on these work from home fitness videos, and as I think I mentioned, you could watch those separately on both the app as well as TechStrong TV. So if you want to do them tonight or whenever you're comfortable, you can just watch that there and follow along. But thanks very much to Jeremy. Next up, though, we're going to head over to Charlene O'Hanlon, our managing editor, who has 2 great interviews for you today.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Thanks, Alan. Welcome back, everybody, to TechStrong TV. I am Charlene O'Hanlon, managing editor at Media Ops, and I am just about to have a great conversation with Killian Kieran, who is CEO of Ethica, which is a privacy company that's based in New York, if I understand correctly. Yeah.
Correct. Thank you,
All
Charlene.
right.
Nice to meet you.
Excellent. Well, it's a pleasure to meet you as well. Want to have a conversation with you about data privacy in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic. I know, rules have pretty much gone out the window, it seems like, in a lot of areas. data privacy seems to be one of those areas that is kind of almost becoming a gray area for a lot of companies and organizations and governmental agencies. So what are you seeing among your customers or even just in the market in general regarding data privacy, and what are some of the things that we have to be aware of?
Yeah, of course. Happy to answer that. So I think what I'd say is you're absolutely right. Given this current health pandemic that we face, I think traditionally the lens through which we look at data privacy has changed slightly. There's this concern over sharing enough data or particularly health information so that we can address the pandemic and quash it as quickly as possible, which I think we all want, I included. And the counterpoint of that, of course, is the sort of civil liberties aspect of ensuring that we don't concede too much ground for the long term as it relates to our data. The other part of that, of course, is the context of existing regulations. So California privacy law, the CCPA, came into effect, or I should say, passed into effect on January 1st this year. However, the enforcement date with the Attorney General's office is July 1st this year. Now, interestingly, in the middle of March, a lobbying body of a number of businesses got together and in the face of the pandemic, asked the AG's office to suspend essentially enforcement for a number of months. I think given the difficulties of the birth of the CCPA, the AG's office took the position quite strongly and probably quite rightly to not do that and to commit to enforcement on July 1st. So I think we have this interesting confluence of events now. You essentially have businesses that are being squeezed from a revenue and cash perspective, frankly, seeking support from the SBA, faced with the reality of having to still comply with these regulations by July 1st, when perhaps the funds and resources to achieve that are not available to them. So it's a real challenge. We see that with a number of customers today.
Yeah, we've been hearing a lot about data breaches and hackers and spammers and scammers who are capitalizing on the COVID-19 crisis, and even very recently the SBA announced that it had a data breach, and there was something on the order of 7 million customers who or citizens whose data was breached. So obviously, those guys are not slowing down. What can businesses do to kind of obviously make sure that their data stays private and safe even in these times, and what are some of those best practices, if you will?
Absolutely. So I think there are two things that every business should be trying to address, allowing for the resource limitations that exist in this current economic environment. The first is obviously, as you mentioned, the security of data. So ensuring that the personal information that is collected by the business is appropriately handled and stored. That arguably is the basis of strong access control systems, the right server environment. So many businesses are hosted in the cloud or migrating towards the cloud over the last number of years. So ensuring that you're using adequate cloud providers, that you're appropriately certified from a security perspective. And if you don't have in-house security capabilities, that you're supported by an external consultative or advisory group that can operate effectively as your information security entity. The other side is specifically the privacy piece. So in order to remain compliant, but also, you might say, meet the obligations and rights of your users, so your average customers, you've got to have an understanding of what personal information you're collecting. And many people call this the data map. It's essentially a disclosure of all of the PII the business collects. The next thing you've got to have is the ability for a consumer or a customer of yours to be able to execute their rights. So for example, under GDPR in Europe or California privacy law, you've got the right to retrieve a copy of your data. You've got the right to erase your information from a system. You also have the right to object to your data being used for certain things like the sale of your data. Businesses need to implement those systems to protect that information on behalf of the user and fulfill the rights of those users. That can be done manually, and often is done so manually at the moment at significant cost and a lack of scalability. The alternative, of course, is to use technology solutions rather like ours or others to automate that process.
Interesting. So let's switch gears a little bit and talk a little bit about the privacy as it relates to civil liberties and how governments are, I would say, considering the privacy argument over the good of the country, if you will. We're talking about Apple and Google having this data location tracker to basically track where people are and as it relates to the spread of the disease, the coronavirus. You know, obviously there are some huge privacy issues related to that. What are your thoughts on it, and you know, really what can we do as a society to kind of maintain that balance between privacy and the good of the people, if you will?
Of course. Look, the honest answer is it's a very challenging conundrum to face. On the one hand, we all probably want to do our part societally to give data willingly today in order to stop this pandemic, right? And as you alluded to, a lot of that relates to contact tracing applications. So systems that in essence allow us to understand whether we've come into contact with an individual that may be currently infected or have been recently infected. There are a myriad of businesses and platforms attempting to solve the contact tracing problem, some by governments like in Singapore, others, as you mentioned, Google. There are also a number of nonprofits here in the US that are addressing the challenge. MIT issued a plan for a contact tracing platform. The essence of the contact tracing platform ultimately is to use location data from a mobile device to understand where you are relative to others and share that information anonymously into effectively a global hive mind that allows us to understand the risk of contamination or infection. The challenge, as you mentioned, in relation to civil liberties is, akin to what faced us in 9/11, right? So post 9/11, federal regulations or laws were passed that allowed certain institutions to analyze phone calls, digital communications, all for a genuinely legitimate reason, right? In the interest of preventing another great act of terrorism. Of course, we've subsequently come to realize 2 decades later that some of that overreached and was overused in the following decades. And I think the challenge here is, how do we allow access to this information today as a society in order to solve a human need, but ensure that it isn't then ongoing used in a way that shouldn't be. So for example, compelling mobile network operators to provide location data in the short term may be reasonable for governments to do, but in the medium term creates some real questions about a surveillance society that we might be creating. Part of the issue here, though, is civil society's understanding of the risk. So average users' knowledge of what data they share and what might seem reasonable today, the risk of how that could be used in the future. So there's a job for industry and government to educate the average user here, I think, also.
Yeah, I know that the contact tracking systems that are being used in Singapore and I believe Sweden, those are opt-in systems. Those they certainly have the opportunity to not use them, the citizens. But do you think that reduces the effectiveness of those systems if we don't have the 100% cooperation of everybody?
I mean, there are immunologists, virologists, and data scientists that are far cleverer than I that have made this very point, right? That ultimately, unless you achieve at least 90 percentile coverage, that the value of something like this is risky because you've got huge blind spots, essentially. The counterpoint to that, of course, is giving individuals the right is a much greater control over their personal freedoms. I think in the short term, but it's a very personal view, I would say, I think we need to be willing to concede this and allow this data to be shared, but in an appropriate fashion. And what I mean by that is knowing that the technology was well built. So what we can't have is a rush to build platform technology that accesses data on behalf of users and does so poorly. A good example of this is democratic primaries that have been held with mobile applications that were built in 2 months. This is a failure of engineering, and that can't be allowed. And it is worth considering that we talk about data privacy often as a policy and governance issue. More often than not, when you spend time around folks that live in this universe, they would acknowledge that it's an engineering problem. I mean, this is a hard technology problem that needs to be solved inside technology. And of course, policy and governance is necessary to impose that. But ultimately, it's about engineers building thoughtful technology that's respectful of their users. If we can do that, then users can trust in those systems, and we don't face the issues that we're facing.
Yeah, that's actually a very good point. I hadn't thought about it that way, but if you do attack it, if you will, from an engineering standpoint, then perhaps we could come up with solutions that perhaps collect data and then automatically destroy it if the data isn't relevant within a certain time period or something like that. Sure. But yeah, I totally agree with you. I believe that there are certain ways that we can provide that data, but do it in a way that enables us to also have our rights to privacy.
Correct. It is very possible to collect this data in a way that does respect an individual's rights to privacy. And I think that's the question we need to answer is, well, how can we do that? And like I said, there are nonprofits and academic institutions that are attempting to do that today. And I have full faith that provided governments listen, there are adequate solutions there, but we need to listen to those.
Excellent, excellent. Well, Killian, thank you so much. So many great things to think about. We are just at the tip of the iceberg on this, and I believe that privacy is going to remain a topic that we talk about time and time again as we try to get through the next few months and or years, and who knows how long, obviously. So maybe we'll be having this conversation again in 6 months.
I suspect so. I hope under better circumstances, but I suspect so.
Well,
Thank you, Charlene.
I hope so as well. So it's been lovely talking to you. Thank you so much for your time and your expertise. Really do appreciate it.
Likewise, a pleasure.
Great. All right, stay tuned for more TechStrong TV. We'll be right back with more stuff.
Disruption is occurring across every aspect of IT. Open source, cloud services, DevOps, and cloud-native software architectures are democratizing IT and radically transforming how business is done. The old ways of creating software and doing IT are being replaced with agile, flexible, faster, and cheaper methods, benefiting vendors and users alike. Accelerated Strategies Group is out to democratize access of industry expertise and knowledge. We use our expertise and experience to offer insightful, intelligent, useful information in a variety of formats relevant to the IT community, digital events, videos, reports, assessments, workshops, and implementation projects with tech vendors, IT organizations, and business leaders. We widely and openly share our work products, often for free. Analyst reports these days aren't worth more than a graph or chart that tells a story or illustrates a market trend. We work with developers, DevOps teams, cloud architects, security engineers, and transformation leaders most every day, creating and implementing transformational strategies and technologies. We're not just thinkers, we're also doers.
Welcome back, everybody, to TechStrong TV. I'm Charlene O'Hanlon, Managing Editor at Media Ops. I'm really excited to have this next conversation with Ravi Lachman and Tiffany Jajka. And I'm sure I just messed up your name, Tiffany, but I apologize for that. But hey, both of them are evangelists at Harness, and hopefully they'll be able to provide some insight into the mind of the developer, especially in these troubled times. So guys, thanks for joining me today. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
And so one of the topics that maybe isn't talked about enough is that whole idea of, engineering burden. We've got developers and engineers who are being tasked with doing so many different things these days. And especially in light of today's economy and the pandemic and everything that's going on, I mean, everybody's running around like maniacs, and there's a lot of stress involved in the workplace today, even at home. So, I kind of want to talk to you guys about what you're seeing in your dealings with engineers and developers out there, what you guys are hearing from them when it comes to engineering burden, and what are some of the things that we're just really not talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. I think even with the current pandemic, I think engineering burden has been on the rise, right? Maybe the pandemic exacerbated the situation just because from a continuity standpoint, certain members of staff might not be available, or if folks are downsizing, or people are unavailable for certain reasons. The amount of burden is increasing. And a lot of times, if you kind of take a look at like, hey, what work is stressful versus what is toil versus what is monotonous versus what you enjoy, a lot of times you're battling the learning curve. We can do a little bit of role play. I can ask Tiffany, imagine you just started a project. Like, what are some of the first steps that you do to get your handle around a project? Like, there's a lot of things we have to learn. But what are some what are some first steps that you do typically, and why is a learning curve for you?
Yeah, I think that's I think that's why you see a lot of just generic questions around best practices. A lot of times people want to know the quickest way to adopt a new process or a new way of doing things. So say, for example, you want to include observability features into your process, your software delivery process. Lots of questions around, well, what's out there for like Kubernetes? What are the de facto tools? And then beyond that is like terminology as well. People are having a hard time kind of adopting to newer terminology, like this cloud native speak almost, around, different concepts that have been around for a really long time, but maybe haven't necessarily had a label on them yet.
Right. Right. Yeah. 14 different definitions for the term cloud native, right? And each company has its own individual definition. So yeah, I can imagine that that's a really tough thing for developers and engineers to have to deal with on a daily basis, especially if it's a new area for them and their boss has just tapped them on the shoulder and said, hey, guess what you're doing now, in addition to everything else that you're doing. So, so how can developers and engineers and all these folks deal with this stuff without completely burning out? I mean, what are you guys seeing out there?
Yeah, I think burnout's always top of mind. Like if you read any sort of developer survey, like my favorite Stack Overflow, so they publish it every year, and burnout's always like top of the list, right? Like, getting burned out. But if you kind of dissect like why people get burned out, if you take a look at why anybody takes a certain job, so you're kind of balancing two things, right? You're balancing the business domain that you're working in, and then you're balancing technical skills, right? So the business domain, maybe if people like to work at a financial institution because it's a wide business domain, but their technology stack is a little bit dated, versus I always like to talk about Wine for Pets. It's a fake company I talk about in my talks. That, hey, Wine for Pets is pretty forward thinking. My Siberian Husky needs beer. I don't give it to him, but the department needs wine. Yeah, but their business domain doesn't really apply to a lot of people, but their technology stack is forward thinking. So if you merge the two together, you're always doing a balancing act in your career. And at one point, you're going to get fed up with one or the other. You're going to be, you know what? I want to use a new technology, and I can't use it at the bank. Or two, I'm sick of getting sued for giving pets alcohol, so I want to get out of Wine for Pets, right? And this is where you start, let's say, exacerbating and start thinking about, do I need to change jobs? Why am I getting burned out? What are the processes? Each organization has different processes, and so a lot. If you kind of even chip that away, right? The entire DevOps movement, if you kind of look at what the developer philosophy is, so shifting left, just something that people probably talk about on Tech Target, like, oh yes, we should shift left. Well, Tiffany and I are as left as it gets. Like, stop giving us more work to do, right? Like, okay, you can shift left and you end up with Tiff and I, right? Like, we're as software engineers, right? So, and a lot of times it's the learning curve. Like if Tiff mentioned a few technologies, let's say Kubernetes, but earlier on in my career, I had a pretty significant outage because I'm not a networking expert, right? Like I'm a Java developer, and it's like, well, if a network engineer would have caught the mistake I made going into the public cloud, and so shifting left, you're giving folks who are typically people building features, you're kind of taking them out of their expertise. Like, oh, now I have to worry about networking. Now I have to worry about AppSec. Now I have to worry about even building it, right? With CI/CD with quotes, right? Do I have to come up with the automation also to build the software? And I feel that's where a lot of burnout is starting to occur. That we're having so much tool share, it's developer or engineering efficiency is kind of getting looked at a different way. The developer could do it all. Well, we're still human.
Right. Well, that's one thing that I often worry about when we're talking about adding all these new tools to the tool chain for compliance and for security and for this and that, and everything is kind of being put on the developer's shoulders these days, it seems like. So but then you take a look at the business environment that we're in. We've got a lot of people who are losing their jobs, and like out of nowhere, it's like one day, the economy's going great, and then the next day it's taken a, fall off a cliff because of the pandemic. So, I imagine that there are a lot of folks out there who are saying, yeah, well, I've got all this more work to do, but yeah, I got to suck it up and I got to do it because otherwise I'm going to lose my job. So where's the balance? I mean, how can, obviously nobody can continue to on this pace forever. So I guess I'm just wondering how are they going to be able to do it and without killing themselves in the process?
I think a lot of it leans onto the community. So something that we try to focus on a lot is how can we leverage everybody's strengths and experiences and sort of what they've gone through to be able to take on some more roles, right? Because when you're shifting left, I mean, you're essentially taking like, I don't know, whatever your methodology is, if it's waterfall, agile, it's taking all those steps and shifting them over so that they fall like right in line, right? So then you have developers doing design thinking sessions, developers doing deployments, automation, and they're basically doing the whole stack, anything from designing to implementing to verifying their applications. And it's tough. I mean, it's the whole solution stack. And so one of the things that I've noticed is that, when you're leaning on other people's expertise, you can really accelerate sort of these things. And even if no one has like done a specific thing, like a design sprint or a design thinking session, you can really leverage other people on your team to do it together. So you're not alone. It's tough when you're the person who has to vet all the tools, figure out the best practices, implement it. I mean, that you're not going to last that long if you're the only person on your team really carrying that burden. And so I think it's really important to be able to kind of have like more roles and more support within your teams to be able to manage.
You guys, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, just kind of piggybacking off of what Tiffany said, I think also is important to kind of set realistic expectations, like, because it kind of what we, even from data that we have, so we recently published kind of our quote unquote state of continuous delivery 2020 report, but we've been kind of looking at week over week trends since, the kind of the pandemic hit. And we actually noticed that people are becoming more efficient, right? Like the number of deployments are going up, which is kind of counterintuitive if you're taking a pause, right? So in our personal lives, like where I live in Metro Atlanta, like all but shut down, right, during the pandemic. But if you kind of think of all the back end stuff that has to happen, so I fly a lot, right? So I typically fly to 1 or 2 cities a week, every week. And so the airline I typically fly, they had to implement a whole bunch of different rule changes to make sure that, the credits I had will apply for over a year now. And lots of businesses are going through that, right? Like kind of the unknown that people are forced to make changes to systems that, people don't touch, right? Like, we haven't touched that in 5 years, or we don't know who did that because he or she is gone, right? So it all leads to the stress. I think a lot of people are stepping up. They, going back to Tiffany's point, like, hey, it depends how you look at the situation. Is it an opportunity? Like, for example, if I worked at the airline, I never touched the billing engine, but as a software engineer, like I kind of know some of the technology. Is it an opportunity for me to learn, or are we under the gun? And it's to be decided by organization. There might be certain incentives that your employers give. I mean, worst case, you get to keep your job, right? Which is reality for a lot of people. It's,
that's an incentive right there.
Yeah. PNC needs your mortgage every month, right? Their payment here, so it's like, you're not going to say no for an answer. So, that's always about dealing with incentive. And I think for a lot of folks, talking to some of my software engineering friends, like some of them took pay cuts, some of them forgo bonuses. If they were contractors, they were getting, kind of furloughed or let go. So, I mean, it's kind of burden is getting increased for everyone.
Yeah, I wonder if some of it also has to do with kind of the mindset, if you will, of those who are taking on these added responsibilities. To your point, Robbie, you could look at it as as an opportunity to expand your skill set, to make yourself more indispensable to the company. And that certainly does go a long way. I mean, those who step up are the ones who are noticed. And so, this could be a great opportunity for engineers and developers who maybe didn't really play a critical role in the organization before, beyond their day-to-day. Absolutely, they could, by stepping up, they could definitely get themselves more noticed. But I wonder also with this shift to working from home, and I firmly believe that that's going to remain even after things get quote unquote back to normal, that we're going to see more folks working from home fairly regularly. Does that kind of change the mindset, or does that change kind of the idea that engineers and developers are maybe taking on too much, or have the opportunity to kind of shine, if you will, in their organization, even in this distributed work environment now? I mean, how does that change?
I think
come to you.
I'll say Tiff.
Yeah, I like that question, because it kind of plays to like, how much can you do in your own space versus when you're sharing a space with others?
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of that balance, I think, again, like when you're at home, what are the things, how do you work in that environment, right? Because for someone like me, I like working at home because I find that no one's staring at me working. I can kind of struggle in peace if I have to. But I know that once I'm in the office, I'm more willing to collaborate. I'm more willing to walk up to someone and ask them for that thing that I need, or, that one question or something that I would probably need to like spend some time typing up if I were to ask over Slack.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's a little bit of a balance there, where maybe you do get more work done at work versus at home, or vice versa. Kind of playing around with that a little bit, because I know that a lot of the interactions that we do in person are really helpful. Like lunch and learns are a great way to share knowledge and also like bond with people over lunch. You get to kind of have two in one. But if you do it online, it's a little bit harder to coordinate. There are things that are harder to coordinate in general with online, and I'm sure we all kind of are experiencing that. But I think it's all in the balance. But yeah, I definitely think that being able to work from home gives you some space and to think really about all this stuff. I mean, you don't really have a commute, right? So that's extra time for you to say like, hey, the solution that we're implementing right now, I think, I can abstract it and kind of share it with other people, or like go over this additional plan. Things become a little bit easier to kind of go through because you've had some more time, I think.
I think there also may be a little lower level of stress working at home, at least from certain people who, like you, Tiffany, I work at home full time. So this is not that different for me, but I imagine for somebody who is used to working in an office and having that, that ability to just kind of swivel around in your chair and say, hey, I got a question for you. That can add a certain level of maybe added stress, or not even really stress, but just kind of an added level of frustration, if you will. But I think for the most part, I think, Robbie, to your point, that increase in productivity that developers are experiencing now, I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that there isn't somebody that they can just kind of swivel around and talk to. I mean, there's certainly a lot of value associated with having social interaction in person, but I think there's also a level of value in having the quiet and the peace and the solitude to be able to get more work done in the process. So do you guys think that we're going to be seeing more developers and engineers and IT folk working from home even after the pandemic passes?
Yeah, I think so. I think it all kind of getting to one of Tiff's points there. It's like, how do you best work, right? Like a lot of software engineering, you have to concentrate, right? Because a lot of what we do is a lot of it is a depends question, right? It's if you ask me a question, I have to do research on it. 99% of the time, I don't know the answer, or I can give you help. Like, as I became more senior in my career, I was like, I have a gut feeling around this. I've seen this before, but we have to do some research to see how this will plan out. And let's say I'm gonna pretend that, let's say I work for Tiff, right? So like Tiff asked me a question like, oh, why is something going slow, or why, or what do you think about this? Can you implement this right now? It's like, hold on, we have a backlog. Let's take a look at what we have to do. Let's kind of take a look at some other factors that we have to take into account. And so this is probably why if you have a lot of time to concentrate, if I'm in the office, I'm talking to everybody, right? I'm a detriment to people. I go and sneak up on them.
So you're the problem.
Yeah, let's go to lunch. Let me start thinking about lunch at like 11 o'clock. Where we're gonna go. But it all depends on how you work. What I've been noticing, and also with the firm that Tiff and I work at, we're noticing that there's a lot more investment in engineering efficiency. I think it's as we're all scattered around. We're kind of forced to take a look at some of the beginning part of the problem. People are unavailable. People are moving around. People are tasked for other things. And so we're really taxing the engineering efficient systems that were put in place, right? Mm-hmm. And what we're starting to see is people are finding holes in it. It's maybe the first time at least the first time in my career, we had to look at a continuity plan. If you're unfamiliar with a business continuity plan, for those of you who work for a company, like the only time I was ever impacted was no more than 5 of us can be in the same flight. Like stuff like that, right?
Right.
We have to look at the entire business now that those teams are focusing on. And so it gives people the unfortunate opportunity to kind of look at their continuity plans, look at how the efficiency items work, look at how portable. And another argument I always like to give, like, hey, we're software engineers, we're not mechanics. You just can't drop us into another application. It's toward innovation work. We have to do a lot of learning and understanding around the application. But yeah, I would say more people would be working from home. Even my sister, she worked for a really large company, and they never let people work from home, and now she's been at home for a month, right? So it's like, it feels like you get to it.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's a new era, and I really think that we're going to see some different ways of working with organizations large and small. So before we close things out, you guys have any last words of advice for engineers, developers who might be feeling a little stressed over either the amount of work that they have to do or the current situation?
Yeah, definitely lean on your community, and don't be afraid to reach out to people if you do want to, if you do need that social interaction. I think it's a great time to leverage your workplace culture, or if you don't really have a strong workplace culture, help build one.
Yeah, great advice, Tiffany. And I think, the burden's only going to increase, right? Like there's, always lurking, there's this concept of a full life cycle developer. So Netflix and Amazon made that really popular. I think it's just kind of the 2020 and what we live in, right? The burden, we're getting better at our craft. So it's a sign that as software engineers, we're getting better by all objective and subjective measures, right? But it always feels like we're always pushing the edge, and it's part of the job. Like you'll always be learning, and always reaching out. I really like Tiff's advice that there's a lot of communities out there, more so than when I started. They're a lot more inclusive now, and so it's definitely partake in the community if you can. It's refreshing.
All right. Well, hey guys, thanks so much for your time. I really do appreciate it. Lots of good information.
Well, thank you.
Thanks. All right, guys, stick around. Hopefully you will stick around for more TechStrong TV, because we've got plenty more coming up.
All righty. Thanks, Charlene. 2 great interviews. I appreciate it. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Next up is in our regular sequence of events. We're going to head over to the Analyst Corner with Mitchell Ashley, CEO, founder of Accelerated Strategies Group.
Well, I've been really pleased with the response that we've had to our polls. A number of people are filling those out throughout the week, and actually we get a very rapid response to it. We kind of get a sense of the data early in the week. We've been looking not necessarily at the technology recently, but more so at the work at home situation. And we'll get back to the tech stuff. Don't worry, we'll get there too. But I've been really curious of what people think about working from home, what their preferences are, why they prefer that. And as you've heard in previous segments, we've had a very strong reaction of those that would like to work from home 3 or more days per week. Number of folks, about a quarter of folks already work from home that responded to the survey. So it's great to see, and I think that's going to be, if not a trend, certainly a reality for us for a while until these stay-at-home orders have been lifted. But even that may take a while. We have some fits and starts of lifting it, coming back. We have fall resurgence of the virus. Let's hope not. But I would plan for people working from home for some time into the future, especially folks in our industry. So this week we decided to ask about productivity. How is it working from home? Now, prior to this, and I've worked from home off and on I've worked on the road a lot too, so which is sort of like working from home too. But I remember there were a lot of concerns. People were concerned about the distractions at home, family members, things going on, just not getting kind of into the groove, getting motivated in a home work environment versus in the office. Other folks were productive and fine with it, but that was always a concern. So when we had a strong of a response to preference for working from home for 3 or more days, even 1 or 2 days a week, it was informative. I didn't expect to see that strong of a response. So now this week's poll, we're asking about your productivity again. So are you at the same, kind of really no difference between working from home, work in the office? Do you feel like you're somewhat, or you think very significant difference in how you're productive working from home? Now, again, one of the previous data that we have is showing that people liked working from home because they didn't have to commute. Well, there's an hour, maybe more, maybe 2 hours of time folks get back not having to commute. So right there, hopefully that would increase your productivity as well. And of course, it may be less productive. Maybe the distractions are an issue for you. Maybe just the environment and the flow, and you need more quiet and not other things happening. It all depends. So really interested to see what the response is this week. So please take a moment to fill out the poll. Also, you'll notice at the bottom, there's a link to a couple of places. One is to the Accelerated Strategies site. Now, we're doing this poll, and we provide you the response to it immediately. So as soon as you enter your answer, we show you what the data looks like up to that point for everyone that's filled it out. So if you're early on, you may not see quite the trends yet. If you're a little later on, of course, you'll start to see that. And we do this for free, as we do a lot of things at Accelerated Strategy. All of our kind of public research, we have tons of information that are available for free. And it's really kind of our mantra is knowledge wants to be free. And there are times that companies engage us for specific activities where they pay for work. But most of our output is free. We don't require registration. We don't require payment. There's no subscription, etc. So you can go to our website, accelst.com, and there's all kinds of great content. We just launched a new book this week on automation. There's white papers about value stream management and some of the perils of how to apply that to software from the manufacturing environment. We have some more papers and research reports that are in development right now as we speak. So those will all be available on our site for you to be able to download. So please check that out. Also, in the survey or in the poll that we are taking, there's a link to prior flash polls. So if you haven't been following, you want to go back and check and look at some of the data, you can click on that. It'll take you to a page on devops.com that will show you the current poll, but also previous ones that we've done on this topic. So please take a moment to fill it out, and I want to thank you ahead of time for doing that. And as always, appreciate your time and the feedback that you've provided us about the Analyst Corner segment and the other content that Accelerated Strategies Group provided as part of TechStrong TV. And of course, there's a lot of other great stuff too. I mean, I watch it almost every day, certainly watch a part of it every day, and enjoy doing that. And it sounds like a lot of folks are finding it super useful and also just a good way to stay connected. So thanks for watching. And I know we'll have some great content coming up this week as well. And we'll be in touch soon. Be careful, be safe, and be careful out there.
DevOps.com is the #1 online destination for DevOps education and community building. DevOps.com covers all aspects of DevOps, including DevOps best practices and tools, DevOps culture, DevSecOps, business impact, continuous testing, continuous delivery, and more. DevOps.com has the largest collection of original DevOps content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.devops.com to learn more. DevOps.com, where the world meets DevOps.
All righty. Thanks, Mitchell. Great stuff. Hey, you know what? Mitchell does this flash poll every week. We've been getting great responses and real insight with it. Take the time to answer the flash poll. It's only one question. And also, again, I don't want to keep banging it, but if you can get onto the TechStrong Slack channel or tweet me at ashimmy, I'd love to hear what you think about paying for virtual events. I think it's a question we're starting to ask ourselves all over now as we move to more and more virtual events versus physical. Next up, we're going to head over to find out what's going on in the channel with our friend Mike Vizard. Mike, take it away.
Hey, Alan. Thanks. So here we are living in interesting times. I know many of you wish that the times were not so interesting, but we have some good news. The government's going to put some more funding together for small businesses. Most of it is likely already spoken for. However, Dell announced that they're making $9 billion, yes, you heard that, $9 billion available to fund various types of IT projects. That money comes on top of what HPE and Cisco made available, so that was roughly another $4.5 billion. So between three companies, we now have $13.5 billion in funding, mostly in the form of no interest loans or things you may not have to pay for all the way into 2021. Add that to all the money that's being made available by other companies, and there might be as much as, I don't know, $20 billion floating around to fund projects. Of course, the challenge is finding those projects. Now, I get the fact that small businesses are not spending a whole lot of money, but OpsRamp put out a survey saying that among large enterprises, 75% of them are going to be investing in IT projects going forward. A lot of them have a lot of cash on hand, and of course some vertical industry segments are dead in the water altogether, but others are continuing to build projects. In fact, many of them are thinking about transforming their nascent digital business strategy into what is actually their brand new spanking business continuity strategy. Mendex has a report out that notes that 90% of organizations said they would build an application if they knew how. A lot of people, of course, buy packaged applications and then they wind up customizing them anyway. So there's a lot of work to be done there. But partners should be thinking about low-code tools as a way to help companies accelerate this digital business transformation. After all, they've all kind of figured out if we're all going to be working from home a lot more often, that means we have to reach out through digital tools, digital marketing, digital sales, and everything is moving online faster than anybody imagined. In the meantime, there's been a lot of news in the channel this week. GitLab launched a channel program, and the idea here is that they're looking for partners that can help them take their open source community and entice them to make use of the commercial version of GitLab's CI/CD platform. The idea here is that you don't really need to go looking for leads because there's people in the open source community that are already using the platform. What you need to do is get them to use some of the more advanced enterprise class capabilities, and in so doing, drive a revenue stream for GitLab. Meanwhile, we saw 2 appointments this week to channel chief spots. McAfee hired Kathleen Curry, who is looking forward to getting closer to partners. She's pointing out that the security space is still pretty strong, pretty lively, and none of these COVID-19 attacks are going away anytime soon, so there's always an opportunity for partners with security expertise. And LogMeIn hired Rick Robus, who is making a case for, hey, we have collaboration software over there, we got security software, and we're very friendly with managed service providers. So he thinks that there's a huge opportunity for partners to sell LogMeIn tools and services, and he's probably right about that. It doesn't look to me like this is going to end anytime soon, and even when it does end, maybe this is the new normal and people are going to work from home more often and may not be going back to those big giant offices anytime soon. Other news to pay attention to this week: Commvault partnered with NetApp, so you're going to see their data protection software on top of converged and hyper-converged systems from NetApp, who also launched something called Project Astra this week, which is a effort to create some data management portability standards on Kubernetes. The idea being here is Kubernetes is clearly going to drive hybrid cloud computing, but if the data is still locked up in a database somewhere, it kind of defeats the purpose. So they're going to work with some members of the Kubernetes community to try to drive some standards in an area that would make data truly portable across different clouds and different platforms. Finally, the CEO of Qualys this week issued a challenge. He's saying that as they go forward, they're going to extend their vulnerability management tool to also include things like endpoint detection and response and incident management. People are highly sensitive to cost. In his case is that, hey, they're going to want to reduce those costs. And one of the best ways to do that is to converge security and IT management. I think that's going to go a long way as we go forward here because, hey, companies are looking for ways to cut costs. And that means they're going to call you guys in the channel and say, what's your best next idea for helping us to contain some costs so that we don't have to lay somebody off? With that, guys, good selling, good luck, and we'll see you next time. And back to Alan.
SecurityBoulevard.com is the leading resource for news, analysis, and education on challenges facing the cybersecurity industry. SecurityBoulevard.com covers all aspects of cybersecurity, including data security, DevSecOps, cloud security, application security, network security, security threats, and more. SecurityBoulevard.com has the largest selection of security content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.securityboulevard.com to learn more. SecurityBoulevard.com, home of Security Bloggers Network.
All right, Mike, thanks very much. I appreciate giving us a little channel insight there. Guys, that's going to wrap up our show for Monday, April 27th. We hope you've enjoyed it. Mention again, if you're interested in the Jeremy Jones Work From Home Fitness video, that is available separately. And many of the segments that you're seeing on here, if you want to just watch the segments without watching the show in its entirety, are broken down by segment, and they'll be up on digitalanarchist.com, our video platform, and you can get them from there. So I know some of you have asked, especially for like last week's Andrew Clay Schaefer interview with John Willis. We have a great one coming up tomorrow, by the way, with Kevin Bear and John. So you want to check that out. But until then, have a great day, everyone. Stay safe, stay well, and stay strong. TechStrong. We're out.